Hey guys, I'm Semiboy, and this is my mid and late game guide for Dragon Knight. Dragon Knight's main goal during the mid and late game is to constantly be using his ultimate to push his towers and to secure map control around the map, and then to abuse his power spikes around getting maybe a core BKB or a core item to then push high ground with your team after taking a Roshan. He scales really well into the late game and almost never really falls off, but he doesn't really carry as hard as many other carries in the game, just due to the fact that he can't output DPS as hard as some other hard carries. When playing Dragon Knight, I don't necessarily look to end the game early, just to be able to use my ultimate to take constant map control around the map, and then maybe try to end the game around 30 to 40 minutes, where I can use my ultimate effectively and I have some core items. The hero can also be a really strong semi-carry in the late game as well, as I mentioned earlier, so it's not necessarily super important to end the game as quick as possible. Generally on Dragon Knight, during teamfights, my job is just to stun whatever hero is super important to the fight, whether that be a support that has a lot of lockdown, or the enemy carry that's trying to kill my carry, etc. and etc. I look to make sure that I just get my stun on important heroes, as well as to use my breathe fire on the enemy carry or the enemy mid laner that might be outputting a lot of physical damage. After that, I then try to just burst down with my right clicks whoever looks burstable. That can either be a support that's in the backline, or it can sometimes just be the enemy carry and apply the AoE slow to the enemy carry and whoever's nearby him, as well as the dot as well. In general, Dragon Knight is looking to just get all his spells off as quickly as he can, and then use his right clicks on whoever's nearby. You don't want to spend a lot of time moving around the fight after you've already initiated with your Dragon Tail, and so after you use Dragon Tail, you generally want to stay in the same position and focus on whatever target you've already decided. Maybe you can use your breathe fire to deal with the enemy carry if you're trying to kill a support, but besides that, you want to stay mostly focused on whatever area of the fight you're in and the most important targets in the area that you're in. That said, for positioning wise, you want to make sure that you're in the front of the fight. If you're in the back of the fight waiting to initiate and your team's already taken a fight, you're going to probably lose the fight. You want to make sure that you're already in the front of the fight and that you're at the start of the initiation. Dragon Knight's the type of hero that never wants to be following up. You want to either use your blink or your shadow blade to be able to get right in the fight at the start and make sure that the enemy team has to deal with you immediately. Ganking on Dragon Knight during the mid and late game can be done with the right items. If you have a blink or a shadow blade, you can definitely initiate ganks and use your Dragon Tail to lock down targets for a long time. However, you're generally going to lack damage, so players should look to gank with a teammate or somebody on their team, usually with a smoke gank, or even just having an invis hero on your team as well can be really useful. To execute ganks, you generally just want to use blink or shadow blade to either hit them once or blink Dragon Tail them, and then pop your breathe fire, and then just try to right click them as many times as possible while your teammates hopefully can follow up. On Dragon Knight, you generally won't be doing much split pushing because your teammates are going to constantly want to be with you. When I think of split pushing on Dragon Knight, I think of just pushing the lanes and then having your team group up with you so that you can just push a tower. You don't really want to split push on Dragon Knight, as you would have to commit your entire ultimate cooldown just to hit the tower a couple times before the enemy comes and responds to you. That said, during the really late game, you can definitely split push on Dragon Knight when you have a ton of items and you might be able to just go for the enemy base. But for the most part, you're going to want to ignore split pushing and you're going to want to focus on going with your team and taking towers with your team. Rushing on Dragon Knight can be kinda risky, because if you pop your ultimate and then the enemy comes and contests you guys, your ultimate's going to run out and then the enemy might be able to take a Roshan really easily. So you want to make sure that you're going to be able to secure the Roshan before you pop your ultimate to take it. Generally though, DK isn't a good Aegis carrier, because Dragon Form doesn't last through reincarnation from Aegis. This is the reason you don't see a lot of Dragon Knights take the Aegis. Generally, when pushing high ground as Dragon Knight, you're going to want to be using your Dragon Form to constantly hit the tower once or twice, and then back off and make sure they can't initiate on you. It's kind of a chip damage type of strategy where you don't really want to fully commit to the tower, and you want to use your HP regen to constantly be going up, hitting it a couple times, taking a little damage, coming back, regenning up, and repeating, making it really hard for the enemy to initiate themselves on you, and making you a really good siege engine for taking base. And then, as soon as your Elder Dragon form is running down, you want to make sure that you back off and you don't get initiated on, while your form will then run out during the team fight. When defending high ground as Dragon Knight, you don't really want to be looking to initiate a fight unless your team is ready, and so you'll just be wanting to get breathe fire on all the enemy heroes. Breathe fire is a really big deal, as it technically just negates 25% of the enemy push and slows them down by 25%. It can be really important to make sure that you get breathe fire on the enemy carries if they're trying to push your base. That said, you want to be careful, as if you walk up really close with breathe fire, you might get initiated on, so make sure you have teammates that are backing you up. To sum up what I've been saying about Dragon Knight, make sure that you're just constantly using your ultimate throughout the mid game to push with your team, while using your Shadow Blade or Blink Dagger or Initiation to constantly gank with your team in the meantime whenever you might not have Dragon form, or if you're looking to push a tower but you need a gank to make it happen. If I would give one piece of advice to players looking to get better at Dragon Knight, it would be that you should constantly be trying to use your ultimate. Every single time your ultimate is off cooldown, look at the map and see if you can make something happen where you should be using your ultimate. Whether that be pushing a tower, taking Roshan, or even just going for a gank. You want to make sure that you're abusing the fact that you have a really strong spell for your ultimate that is pretty spammable. So make sure that as soon as you get it off cooldown, you try to use it. Dragon Knight's a great hero for any type of game, due to the fact that he's a super reliable laner, he's really difficult to shut down, and he's a kind of a jack of all trades hero that has a really good stun, he has an AoE nuke, and he has the ability to push towers, meaning that he does a ton of different things really well. He's a really objective hero though, because he definitely wants to be pushing towers all the time and wants to be going with his team. And along with that, your skill builds and item builds can vary a lot depending on what type of game you're in and what you need for your team. This is kind of one of the downfalls of being a jack of all trades hero, is that there's a ton of different item choices and a ton of different skill choices that you need to make during the course of the game to effectively play the hero. I would say that you should pick Dragon Knight if you don't really have last pick and you don't know your matchup and you need to pick the hero expecting to go into kind of a tough lane that you just want to group up with your team afterwards. Generally, Dragon Knight isn't great if you have a hero that wants to constantly be split pushing and never go with the team. You kind of want to pick up around lineups that will eventually want a 5-man and eventually want to run at the enemy team. That said, he's such a versatile hero that he can be picked in almost any situation. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to check out the rest of the Dragon Knight course.